we go to the caller we want?
Iain Lee on talkRADIO.
We have ways of making you talk.
Good evening, dear listener. This is Iain Lee. This is Talk Radio, and well, you can the person you can hear banging around in the background is Tony Robbins.
I don't want to do this. I don't.
Sorry?
Look, will you look at that stream?
Yes.
So, like, you are well lit
Yes.
and look about 6'5". I
Well-
look like one of the 7 dwarfs, and I'm in the shadows.
Well, I am about 6'5", and you are quite tiny.
Oh, come on! I'm not that small.
Come on. Okay, let's. Do you want a cushion to sit on, Tony?
No, don't patronise me.
Okay.
Just like me.
Where are the bloody mince pies you were promising?
Well, I tweeted. No, I tweeted Kath.
Yes.
Mad Kath. I tweeted her.
That name's gonna stick.
And I said, I'll stop at Fortnum's and get some.
Yes.
And she goes, oh no, we're Greg's people. We are.
Well, she is. Yeah, she is quite common.
She's media.
You're quite common though. You play. I've read the whole book, Tony. I've read the whole book. There's no secrets from me, buddy. You come across on TV as quite well spoken and quite well to do, but you're.
Well,
Right.
I'm half and half really,
Right.
because my mum and dad were working class Hackney people,
Yeah.
and my dad just before the war. He was very bright, but he couldn't go to university because he was the second son of a working class family.
Right.
There was no money to do it in those days. So he worked for what was then called the London County Council, which became the Greater London Council. And in order to get on, you had to do exams, and he would just like study every night, and he passed his exams and got sufficient money to be able to put the mortgage down on a semi-detached house in South Woodford.
Brilliant.
Which was like, the beginning of kind of, I wouldn't say it was posh, but it was certainly...
People didn't do it in those days.
No.
It was not that common to get a mortgage.
Their friend said, you have paid £998 for this house.
Yeah.
You will be weighed down with debt for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You're absolutely crazy. So they were like in semi-detached world. So half of my childhood was like looking back at Hackney and all that consider yourself stuff.
Literally,
and, and the other half was looking out into Essex, which in those days was really posh.
Yeah.
And in fact, when you think about it, the people that we call like Essex boys and Essex girls, how come they've got those Cockney accents and those chirpy wit?
Yeah.
That chirpy wit. It's because they're all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the white working class who left London like my mum and dad did.
Did your... I love the book, and people who've been listening the last couple of weeks will have heard me reading out loads of bits, changing some of the bits because it's filthy. A lot of the 60s and 70s, you were doing kind of experimental theatre or fringe theatre or, kind of not the mainstream. Did your parents, who sounded absolutely delightful, by the way, did they ever say, come on now, Tony, you've had a fair crack at this, maybe you should get a proper job? No,
not at all. When my dad went into the RAF in the Second World War, he was just like a corporal fitter in the RAF, patching up the hurricanes. He used to say, so that posher kids could fly up in the sky, shoot down Jerry and then die.
Yeah.
But he's in East Scotland doing this, and there's a Canadian Forces dance band, lots of Canadians up there at that time, and they hadn't got a pianist. And so my dad said, I'll do it. He could only just about find his way around the piano. But so throughout the Second World War, he had the time of his life going around all these village halls in East Scotland playing boogie piano. And he became the most fantastic boogie pianist.
Wow.
And you know how pianists in those bands, they became the front people. I mean, you could see that later on in Little Richard.
Jerry Lee Lewis.
Absolutely. It was very much that they followed on from all those boogie stars. So my dad was like that, 5'3",
really?
prancing round. And so then when he came back to South Woodford when the war was over, and my mum went into the WAF and she was doing lots of amateur drama, and then they found they'd got this little kid who had got some kind of talent for doing all that kind of thing. They just loved it. It was what they were never able to do, or it was, somehow I was able to act out their dreams in a funny sort of way. So up until my mid-20s, most of my theatre was pretty straight, and they loved that. But then the 60s, early 70s came, and like an awful lot of young people at that time, I was really irritated by what seemed to me to be the formality, the bourgeois nature of British theatre, and I wanted to kick against the traces. And even then, Mum and Dad were quite happy. You know, they didn't. I can remember appearing nude at the almost free theatre.
I have in my very brief theatrical career, I've appeared nude in front of my mum.
Got the old man out.
Yeah, it's
give it a little polish before you go on. It doesn't look quite as tiny.
It's a very freeing thing to do. I didn't have a woman in bed with me if I've got the same performance, trying to arouse me like you do every night before you jump out naked in front of everyone. She was trying to get you hard.
Yeah. My mum, you see, my mum.
We're straight in there. We might as well
to finish the less outrageous part of the story. When my mum saw me in the nude, I said, you know, does it worry you? She said, no, you look like you were wearing a very smart little suit.
Oh, I'm going to say that to my boys when they have a bath, yes.
But there's this wonderful woman called Maggie Ford, who was a friend of mine who was in the show too. She was playing my wife. And at the very end of the show, it's a bit too complex to explain, but the play was called Little Hopping Robin, right? And my character is Little Hopping Robin, but it is also the name of my Willie. and when you start seeing the play, the play seems really, really weird. Yeah. And after about a quarter of an hour, the audience realised that the play was actually a dream that my character was having. So you learn about his real life. It's quite a clever idea. You learn about his real life from the fantasies that he's having in the dream. And then right at the very end of the play, there's a lighting change. There's darkness, and then the lights slowly come up. And Little Hopping Robin, my character, is in bed with his wife. It's like it's morning. Yeah. And then I get up and I walk towards the audience with no clothes on, and I've got this electric razor and I start shaving. So it's like the fantasy is all over, and now the agony of the real world has begun. And I'm there, you know.
And this isn't in like a huge theatre. This is in like a tiny little theatre.
It's a tiny little theatre.
So
yeah, I think I say in the book that you know, if I'd sneezed, it would have waved about in the front row's face. Anyway, so Maggie says to me at the dress rehearsal, she said, well, what would happen if, you know, if you had an erection at that moment? I said, don't be silly, Maggie. I said, it's theatre. That wouldn't happen. I'm an actor. I'm concentrating on what I'm doing. I'm not kind of having some weird sort of, you know, erotic moment in front of the audience. I'm far too professional for that. And she said, what were you... You don't think you'd ever have an erection? I said, no. And she said, not even if I tried to make you have one? And I said, well, obviously, if you grabbed hold of it and waved it about, she said, you're saying that I could do what I liked as long as I didn't touch it and you wouldn't have an erection? I said, no, absolutely not.
There's a challenge.
What a stupid thing to know. Why did I say no, absolutely not? Yeah. I could have just let it hang.
Yeah.
Literally. And walked away. But no, Mr. Blah, blah, blah. So,
yes,
every night at the end of the play, we would be under the duvet together in that blackout. And she would do something to me. Like I might hear her moisten her thumb and just touch my chest. Or a knee might rub my thigh.
I'm getting hard now just thinking about it. This is outrageous.
He actually is, listeners.
Yes, very erotic.
And the worst one, the worst one was the night that my mum and dad came. I mean, you know, to get a little... can I say stiffy?
You can say stiffy, okay. Yes.
To get, you know, to get a stiffy in front of an audience would be bad enough, but in front of your mum and dad...
That is very Freudian.
You know, what? Yeah, I mean, why that should make a difference, I don't know, but it would just be awful, wouldn't it? So... She knows my mum and dad are out there. So I'm lying there in the darkness with the duvet on and Maggie. And I'm lying there and nothing happens. And I'm thinking, what is she going to do? And still she does nothing. And then, of course, my mind starts to go, what will she do? Will she do this? Will she do that? Will she do the other? Oh, God, I think something's happening.
Maggie's a very naughty lady.
And then the lights went on.
Yeah.
And the lights went on, and so I turned back the duvet and I got out of bed. But I made sure my back was to the audience.
So you have a little check.
I did that familiar for any man who's been in that situation. The hard slap with the back of the hand. Bang! Like a monkey's tail going across the horizon. And and it seemed to be all right. But to this day, I don't know whether or not there was a little bit more blood flowing than would normally.
You don't know if your mum was looking you in the eye, so to speak.
Yeah.
Tony, you've said you're quite happy to take calls.
What about that incident?
From the authorities. 40 years ago, I was in an experimental theatre, and I believe Tony Robinson was aroused in front of me. I'd like to...
all these years, I've thought it was because of me.
Put your headphones on. We've got... right. If you want to call in, 0344 499 1000.
It's you.
No, say hello to Alan Caddick.
Oh. Hello, Alan Caddick.
Good evening, Sir Tony.
Oh, Sir Tony.
You creep.
At least somebody has said it, Ian.
I didn't know. I don't know what the etiquette is, and I was panicking about whether I should say Sir Tony. You go, oh no, it's fine. Just call me Tony.
But you could have given me the opportunity to be Jack the Lad, couldn't it? As it was.
I still find it incredible that you. Do you still find it incredible? You are a knight of the realm. You are Sir Tony of Robinson. Is that?
Yeah.
You just accept it now.
Well, I forget all about it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I swear to you, I hadn't thought about that all day until it was the first 3 months. I just thought it was the wildest, most crazy, wonderful thing in the world. Are you still there, Alan? By the way,
yeah, I'm here.
All right, you're right.
I know, man.
All right.
I mean, you're a true icon of my childhood. We Stay Tuned and Maid Marian.
There's a little volume control if Alan's annoying you too much. If you follow your headphone cable, Tony. But,
okay. Yeah.
Hip, 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 Ian, by the way.
Hip, 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 Alan. Nice to talk to you. Again, I don't want to do too many of the stories from the book, because I think people should buy the book. But it opens up with you finding out that you knew you were up for some. How does that work then? Is there like a rumour, or does someone get in touch with you?
You're not supposed to know anything until you get the letter. But I just happened to be amongst a group of people who were fairly close to the sources of power, and this woman, I'm eating my dinner, and this woman who I knew just a little bit came over to me. She just leant into my ear. She said, "You, Tony, you may be getting a letter fairly soon, and I think you might be quite happy about its contents." And then she looked at me and she said, "Do you know what I mean?" And I said, yeah. I had no idea. Hadn't a flipping clue.
Well done.
I hadn't a flipping clue what she was talking about. But my daughter is much more clued up about that, about politics, that kind of thing. She said, I think that means that you're going to, get something. Yeah. Get an award or something. And
you did, and you are, and I was so pleased when I read it, because I didn't know a lot about your kind of all your political work and all the stuff that you did in the 60s and 70s, and before you became famous in terms of the television. And I was so pleased that one of the good guys had got a ridiculously wonderful, a sir. Reading the book, it makes more sense, kind of knowing where you've come from and what all the things that you've achieved and you've worked for outside of, TV studios.
It's very nice that you're flattering me like this, but I can hear Alan's breathing.
Alan, what would you like to say to Sir Tony?
Sir Tony, you're a true icon of my childhood. We Stay Tuned and Maid Marian. What inspired you to create Maid Marian and a Merry Man?
Oh, what inspired you to create Maid Marian and a Merry Man? It feels like Swap Shop now.
It does, yeah. Right. I used to go and pick up my daughter from school when she was about 9 or 10, and this may surprise you, but she's not the tallest pencil in the box.
Okay.
And she certainly wasn't when she was 9 or 10, but she has got this incredible dominant personality. And somehow or other, she had constructed the world in such a way whereby she would be the striker of the school football, the primary school football team. and she would go, and she was just so useless at football. whenever anyone when the ball came anywhere near her, it would bounce off her somewhere random, and all the other 10 members of the team would be chasing around after her like this swarm of bees. And every time one of them got it, she would berate them for.
Fantastic.
And I remember as I was watching her, I was thinking, God, if you'd been around at the time of Robin Hood and his Merry Men, it wouldn't have been Robin who was running the gang. And it was just that thought. It's like, you know, in Hollywood they say you need the one-line pitch. And that was my one-line pitch to the BBC. And it was like, you know, this is years and years and years ago. And I got the commission really on that one-line pitch. I got the commission to write a pilot.
And people talk so fondly of it still. You know, it was, and it was one of those it was one of those programmes that kids could enjoy it, but also adults would dig it as well.
My contention was, and I think you see this in Roald Dahl and in writers like Joan Aitken, Dinah Wynne-Jones, the Brothers Grimm, Hans Andersen, that a writer who's worth their salt, who's writing what we call children's books, doesn't, as it were, write for children. They write to that part of their heart and soul that they use when they're addressing children, when they're thinking about... You've got kids, haven't you?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
Whenever you're talking about your kids or their friends, there's a part of you, isn't there, that is engaged with. And that, I think, is what you write into. Now, so it felt to me that as long as I'm writing into that space, I can actually say what I like and be as witty as I want to, as long as I never betray that space. And I think what that means is if you pull off that trick, it means that adults enjoy it as much as the kids do. And you can even, as long as you are telling a joke that's funny for kids, if there's a colour to it that also makes adults laugh, that's fine. You know, why not? And that's what you know, an awful lot of
sorry, one second. Alan, are you either eating or masturbating? What's going on there?
I'm composing an email for Performance Ring.
Okay, you're composing an email. Okay, well, thanks for calling, Alan.
Thank you.
Bye. 0344.
He didn't answer your question.
No, he didn't. He didn't. You reminded me. Well, the listeners will know that I've been writing.
Because I've written emails by doing at least one of those. It
helps concentrate. Yeah. I've been writing a list of all the names that pop up in your book, and I've left the bloody list at home. Julia Donaldson.
Yeah.
Talking about children's books and stuff. You were friends. You knew her. You know her.
I'd very seldom. We've got the same publisher now and all that kind of stuff. But no, this is in the 70s.
Yeah.
There were a whole. But there was a wonderful, a brilliant theatre director who only died 2 or 3 weeks ago. Did lots of stuff for the National Theatre and the Royal Shakespeare Company called Howard Davis. He and I, Julia Donaldson, the guy who had the idea that we should have cycle tracks round the whole of England. John Grimshaw, just a load of us. We were all like in our mid to late 20s in Bristol. Heady smoke was in the air, lots of wonderful ideas. It was a great time. I don't think Julia Donaldson ever had a spliff in her life.
No, of course.
Nor me. But
well, hang on. We'll get onto that a bit later on. For those who don't know, Julia Donaldson, if you've got kids, you'll know who she is. She's written some of the most magical books for young people that are just because. When you're reading, my boys are going to be 7 and 5 in January, so the oldest has started reading himself now, doesn't want me to read to him. But if you're going to be reading your books to kids, there's got to be a little something in it. It's got to be, a good story and there's got to be something to it. And Julia has that perfectly. It's magical. Absolutely magical.
There's a smartness about what she does. It's like a Japanese haiku, isn't it? You think, how can someone be that smart and that vivid?
Yeah.
And they've written a book which is about like 130 words or whatever.
She conveys a whole world in those short words.
Yeah. And it was, in a way, I'm using Julia as a metaphor in that book. She was one of about 20 or 30 people who were around at that time time who just completely blew me away. I was like had always been very much like a London-based actor, and went down to Bristol, to Clifton, which is really posh now. It's a bit like, like Shoreditch when I was a kid was the roughest place. No one would live in Shoreditch. It was a joke, you'll end up in Shoreditch. And really exactly the same thing.
Clifton's very fancy now, yeah.
But it was, in those days, it was just, it was lots and lots of flats. Lovely housing stock, but lots of student flats. And that was the kind of environment that I had.
I want to play you one of your greatest hits. You must be sick to death of hearing this, but I don't care. I'm going to play this because I just think this sums up everything about you so wonderfully. Have a listen to this. Recognise those footsteps?
Yes, they are mine.
I love it!
They are my footsteps. You think they're Oliver Twist's?
Everything is a lie. That's from the original 1960 soundtrack recording of Oliver,
which was made in the Maida Vale studios.
Was it really?
Yeah, where the Beatles and the Stones later, much later, did their all those historic live BBC stuff.
Yeah.
So much of the John Peel stuff came out of those studios, and I'm 13 years old. I'm in this new hit musical called Oliver. I'm just playing one of the boys.
When Oliver was a sensation. It's easy to forget that everyone was completely enamoured by it.
Yeah, the thing is, Ian, up until that time, ordinary theatre, like straight theatre, that had been busted wide open. All that sort of post-war politeness had gone with people like George Osborne, Harold Pinter, Arnold Wesker. The musical was still...
Joe Osborne. Is it George?
George. No, George. I said that George Osborne.
Yes.
John Osborne.
Yeah, John Osborne.
George Osborne was writing plays at that time, but they were pretty crappy. Yeah. That was a very interesting Freudian slip.
There we go. You see the politics fighting to get out.
Anyway.
Yeah.
The musical at that time was American. 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, Paint Your Wagon, Oklahoma, Carousel. There's just millions of them. There wasn't an English musical. Suddenly, we come on, this bunch of chirpy little London boys and Fagin and Nancy and all that stuff. We're British. And the audiences absolutely loved it. It was a smash hit. A few weeks in, they realised it was a smash hit, so they could start selling, vinyl long players.
Make a few quid out of it,
in the bars in the interval. So we went in and recorded it, and the boy who was playing the Oliver Twist, and actually that violin does sound like the beginning of the Blackadder.
I know. I just realised that I was playing that. I thought I can imagine his heart sinking. He's doing that. No,
but anyway. So Keith Hampshire, the boy who's playing the Artful Dodger, is supposed to walk up and ask for more.
Yeah.
But he's got, and here's a word you don't hear very often now, he's got plimsolls on.
Wonderful.
And I go, I've got my Chelsea boots on.
With a big heel?
With a big heel.
Good for you.
Yeah. 13, I'm like, I can walk under a table.
Yeah.
So little. And so I did that long and dramatic walk. And it's still there. I mean, that album is still, you can still get that.
Yeah. Oh, good.
And I get like about £7.83 a year.
Do you really? Do you still get residuals on that?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
It's my happy feet.
We've been playing that a lot this week. Guess who's coming on next week? Listen to these feet for a clue. There are so many revelations in the book. I should mention the title of the book. That would help, wouldn't it? Tony Robinson, No Cunning Plan, My Story.
It took me a long... Actually, the truth is...
Don't tell me it was ghostwritten.
No, you bet not. Oh, no. God,
I hate that.
No, 11 months it took me to write it. But anyway... no, it wasn't ghostwritten. The fact that you could even raise that question, it actually really pisses me off.
Well,
I've gone back to how I was when I was the dwarf at the beginning of the programme on the screen. We've all been going nice.
I know. I asked the probing questions.
Yeah, you do.
So many of them are. I knew yours wasn't. So many of them are these days, aren't they? And it seems crazy. Why? I want a book that's by the person.
Yeah,
well,
that's what I thought.
How long did it take? Were you
11 months.
And were you kind of a strict? Get up at 9 o'clock, go and sit in the writing room and...
No, I've never been strict about time, but I've always been strict on delivery. It's about being an actor. So I tried to write my autobiography 4 or 5 times prior to that, and I'd never really got beyond about the first chapter. It seemed such a narcissistic thing to do. And I was irritated with myself for doing it, But then when Macmillan said to me, we will pay you, and that much.
Wow.
But you've got to deliver it within a year. Suddenly,
so you
all
had a
those
date
all those actor muscles.
Yeah.
Came in. So even though, actually, a lot of it I wrote on the plane. I had a fabulous job during that year, which was a 3-part series for Discovery on the Wild West, done in 3D. You remember, wearing the glasses?
Yeah.
Which was like, you could only get that if you had the really expensive Sky box.
Yeah.
And you got the glasses free. And it didn't work out for them. It was
Has anyone actually seen it? Because the 3D thing didn't take off, did it?
But they showed it in kind of 2.5D. They showed it for ordinary poor
for
people.
plebs, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but like getting out to Montana and places like that was hours and hours and hours on the plane. So it was great. I never used to watch any of the HBO stuff or eat all the meals or get hammered on the plane. I just used to write there. And setting up for 3D takes forever. So there was an awful lot of time where I'd be just sitting, hanging around, and I'd just write. And it was, I managed to do it in the 11 months.
I was saying in the lift, it's very honest. And you mentioned the drugs, skinning up and it's really honest. Did you do talk about, kind of smoking weed and hash and stuff, you in the theatre.
Weed and hash and stuff?
Weed and hash and stuff.
You've been around, mate.
You got high on the spliffs, the magic cigarettes. And was there any hesitation about being so honest and so open?
I've just had my 70th birthday, really.
Gosh.
What the frig.
Yeah.
But when I first started it, I thought, this is going to be a book about my work.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting, and that's what it's always embarrassing to say. That's what my fans want to hear about. But the more I wrote it, the more I thought, it doesn't make sense. My choices don't make sense unless I write about the rest of my life. It just kind of doesn't work.
Yeah.
And in a way, it was like very much a writer's muscle that made me decide to include much more of the raw stuff about my life, my relationships, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It wasn't really that I wanted to be particularly sensational. I think I would have, if I could have written the same stuff, but in a kind of ruder sort of way.
Oh, and it was and I didn't think it was sensational at all. It was really interesting. I have had a relationship with drugs in the past, and I was just thinking, well, I don't know if I could be that honest and open about it. And it's not you going, hey man, I did this and I did this and I did this. It's drugs are a part of a lot of people's lives, and it's just part of your life.
I think what happens, I found the second half of the book harder to write. It's like when I was a kid and being a child professional actor and all that, and even the late 60s and all the nonsense that we got up to then. Of course, I'm writing about me, but in a way, I'm looking at it down a telescope, like the wrong end maybe of the telescope. It's someone I know, but I feel wryly amused about that person, and that person made so many stupid mistakes, and if it was me now, I would do things in a different way. But you're not. You're like in your late teens, your early 20s, and the world's different. So I could do it with a kind of affection for that person. And so it wasn't sort of embarrassing. I mean, there are 2 or 3 whoa bits in it, aren't there?
Yeah.
But I didn't which when I read up to my kids, they went, oh God, you're not going to say that in a book. I have to go to work and with people who might have read it. But nevertheless, I felt a kind of affection for it, and hopefully that comes across.
Yeah.
That when I do mess up as far as sex is concerned, there's a kind of gentle comedy about it.
Oh, the whole book's very charming.
Thank you.
It's very charming, and I say I devoured it within a few days, and it's it made me laugh a lot. It also made me cry quite a bit. And I'll tell you the bits that made me cry. Your dad, when he got dementia, just that seemed to happen really suddenly. Just, within a matter of moments, suddenly he went from being, in inverted commas, normal to having this air of confusion around him, and my granddad had Alzheimer's, my mum's got MS, and she has kind of Alzheimer's sort of symptoms in that she gets very forgetful. And it's hard work to deal with that. And it must...
Can I just stop you right there?
Yeah, go.
The fact that you get very forgetful doesn't necessarily mean it has anything to do with dementia.
No,
we all
right.
have that terror.
Yeah.
But what people at Alzheimer's Society say is it's not... A symptom of Alzheimer's is not when you go into a room and forget why you've gone into that room.
Yeah.
We all do that, and we tend to do that more when we get older.
Yeah.
And you and I guess, have already started doing it.
Yes.
The symptom of Alzheimer's is when you go into a room and don't know where you are.
Right.
So I just think... Sorry, to pick you up.
No,
I just
you're
think
absolutely right.
An important observation.
Yeah, of
but
course.
Carry on. Anyway.
No, I was just... it must have been incredibly tough for you and your family. Of course, it's incredibly tough. It was an understatement.
I mean, you said to me about how quickly it happened. In a way, in retrospect, I don't think it did. I think two things happened. I think, first of all, my dad covered up his confusion.
Right, okay.
And we didn't recognise what it was.
Yeah.
And secondly, my mum, who was very much part of, as it were, that Dunkirk generation, didn't share it. Her gorgeous only son, who she's so proud of, who of course doesn't live at home anymore. He's got his own life. I want him to have a great career. I don't want to bother him with that stuff. I think sorry, I get quite upset thinking about that.
Yeah,
now.
of course.
But I think there was a year in my mum's life.
She kept it.
Where she kept it to herself, and she must have been going through God knows what. But, that generation was so tough and had so much belief in the fact that they shouldn't make a fuss. And indeed, we didn't know anything about Alzheimer's in those days.
No.
I mean, now if it happened to your mum and dad or me, there would be people around who would identify it so much earlier. But even my dad's GP had no idea what was going on.
Well, there's that incredible bit in the book where you take him, you and your mum take him to the doctors, and the doctor looks at you and says, "Well, do you have a cunning plan?" And it's just flipping heck. You're confronted with this unknown situation, and people are making jokes about you being on the TV.
I don't really do hate. I think I'm too intellectually lazy or emotionally lazy to do hate, or for more than about 3 minutes, like when someone smashed your car window or that, and you want the perpetrator's arm sawn off slowly for about 3 minutes. But some of the treatment that my dad received at that time, although I know it was about ignorance rather than people being malicious, I still feel a surge of angry hatred about that. And I think I will to the end of my days.
The place my granddad ended up in the 80s, I mean, it was just it's just heartbreaking to because people didn't know what to do. The medical people didn't know what to do, with people that were lost and confused like that.
But even now, every time an election is coming up, every party will talk about the fact that old people in general, and those with dementia in particular, are incredibly valued members of society, and they must be invested in. It's what is called playing to the grey vote, because older people tend to vote more than younger people do. The moment after the election has happened, the politicians, guess what? They've got temporary amnesia.
We haven't got any money in the budget to invest in care homes.
Because the clever thing is that by and large, it's not the government directly who does that. It's other agencies, isn't it? It's local government, or it's the NHS, or it's the care homes via money that goes into the care homes. every time those cuts happen, and I'm sorry if I'm talking angry politics like someone on talk radio, but
you should be on the Julia Hartley-Brewer show. No, you shouldn't. Trust me.
I think I might have done a better job. Everybody in the world thinks they could have dealt with that situation better, don't they? Anyway, what were we talking? Yeah. Anyway,
I've not listened to it. I can't bring myself to listen to it.
Anyway, Anytime any of those cuts happens, because indirectly they affect the most vulnerable in society, who are old people. So, you and I remember how these things were in the 80s, and yet, sure, there are a lot of things that have changed to some extent, but the shortfall as far as investing in our own people with dementia are just us.
Yeah. And it's going to get worse because people are living longer. And so there is going to be more and more people that will get it, unfortunately. It terrifies me.
It's absolutely bonkers. It terrifies you. It terrifies me. Everyone we're talking to now will feel that terror, and very few people will actually get involved either socially, care-wise, politically, in trying to make things better.
Oh, I've seen it just on a slight. I mentioned my mum's got MS, and she's 66, and she's got terrible. She can't do anything for herself, and she's in a care home, and has been for about 8 or 9 years. And we've had that thing where she's had to sell the house, and all of her savings have been eaten up, and all this money that she'd saved, that's all gone. And the last 6 months, it's sorted now, but she reached the £23,000 threshold. The battle we had with the council to keep her in this care home instead of just farming her out to a cheaper one that could have been miles away.
Yeah.
The battle. I'm going, but she over the last 8 years, she's giving you about £330,000. There's no humanity in it.
There's a double cruelty, isn't there? Because you are forced, as it were, to sell your nest egg.
Yeah.
The money that you were always told by governments you ought to try and accrue.
Yep.
What they call them good, hard-working, ordinary people.
Yes.
All that is leached away from you. And then when you've run out, by that time, you're likely to be in, it's not the case with your mum, but with so many people, they're likely to be in their mid-80s or whatever. Yeah. They've been in that care home forever and a day, and now they're told they've got to downscale the quality of their lives.
Which is incredible.
It is just horrible.
0344 499 1000. We'll take an ad. Are you okay to stick around for another 15
No, I'm angry now. I'm going to pace around the corridors and then maybe come back a little bit later. Feeling a little bit late.
Let's take a break and you can punch me if you want. Have you ever punched anyone? Proper punched someone in the face?
It is alleged that I have, but I think I just had a red flash.
Really? I bet you've got a bit of a temper on you, haven't you?
Deep down.
I'm worried that we're getting there. Let's go to a break. Is he coming back? He's stormed off. Are you coming back, Tony?
Well, are you going to be sensible?
Well, I'll try and be sensible, but I just think the attitude you've displayed this evening is
disgraceful.
Absolutely outrageous. You're a knight of the realm. Is it? It must be the most thrilling day out. The day you go and get. Knighted.
When the old sword came down.
Steady. Are we talking about the...
Oh, come on here. That's why I left the room.
We're back to that play.
When the sword came down, you know how in movies everything goes into slow-mo.
Yeah.
And you know how probably the only time you ever experience that is during a car crash.
Yeah.
It does feel like slow-mo. It really did feel like it happened at that moment.
How funny.
It was old William, and it goes da, 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 and I'm thinking, what is happening now? And it must be the
surrealist thing. So you're kneeling down.
Yeah.
I mean, do you look up at him or do you look at the ground? You probably don't remember.
No, I was looking at him. He's I'm no great monarchist or anything, but he's a really good bloke who's kind of shared...
He's good at waving a sword.
Well, he's like he does like irony. He twinkles.
Yeah.
He twinkles.
Yeah.
And when I talked to him afterwards, he was twinkling and he was joking about it all. So it was like I wasn't looking like someone out of Westworld knighting me, which I think I might have felt had it been some other members of.
Was there a part
family.
of your lefty ideology?
Yeah.
I said that as I'm a lefty as well. But was there a part of you that kind of questioned, should I be accepting?
No, do you know?
This?
I think if it had happened to me 10 or 20 years earlier, I might well have thought that. But I thought that one of the good things that the Blair government did was to set up this thing called the Honours Committee. So those awards now are no longer at the behest of the PR team at Buckingham Palace.
Right.
Or even at the behest of leaders of political parties. You know, like anybody can be submitted, and the parties can submit too. But it's then up to this panel of people. I think there's about 40 of them altogether. And yes, admittedly, they are probably what people think of as the great and the good by and large.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there's this bunch of people, and the question they are asked is, do you think this person deserves to be honoured for their contribution to the country? And I think for the answer to be yes, how bloody cool is that? You know, how great is that? Do I feel guilty about that? No, I don't. You can argue about it with me in a pub if you like.
Yeah.
Don't care. I'm really proud to receive that honour from my country.
Good. Well, it's nice to hear it put that way. You know, are you aware of the affection that there is for you in this country?
I think it's in this room.
I've loosened my belt when you left the room, Tony.
Yeah, that was just weight. No, I guess not, really.
Really? Because there is an incredible... When, of all the guests that we've had on, so many people are so excited. And there's a real... Because of Time Team, which I've confessed to you I've never seen, but that was a phenomenon. Because of Blackadder, because of all of these things, people feel like they know you, I think.
Yeah.
And people... I have never heard or read... a bad word about you.
Oh, you should see my Twitter feed. Yeah, I remember reading Dirk Bogarde years ago, who was the nation's heartthrob.
Yeah.
He said, that is nothing to do with me. He said, I am ambitious, manipulative thug, as he said most people in show business are.
Yeah.
I just happen to have wonderful eyes. And I thought that was a wonderful observation. You know, it's, you know, I've always been ambitious.
Yeah.
I can have a temper on me. I can get very grouchy. I would never do, and I've been asked loads of times, I would never do I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here.
Have you been asked? They've asked.
Yeah. I wouldn't do it, A, because I'm boring, B, because I'd come across looking like a real arse. You know?
Why? Because you'd be bossing people around, or you'd just be grumpy with the situation?
I'd get tired and irritable, I think. Yeah.
Oh, don't do it. No, don't do any of that. Big Brother, though, you'd be up for that? You go in the Big Brother house?
I just wouldn't be very nice.
That's what we want to see.
Yeah,
that's what we want to see.
Well, you know.
Do it. No,
200 grand?
No. we must mention this. The book, by the way, Tony Robinson, No Cunning Plan. I'll retweet the link on Amazon as well. Ideal Christmas present, guys.
For everybody in the family, guys.
Everybody. You've been doing a series of kind of live dates to promote the book. You've got one more coming up.
Yeah. This is soppy romanticism.
This is great. I love this.
Okay. It's in South Woodford, which is further on from East London.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually in Woodford Green. The postcode is no longer London. It's where Essex starts.
Right.
And it's at the Sir James Hawkey Hall, where I did all my amateur acting when I was 9 or 10, and where my mum and dad did all their amateur acting
isn't that lovely?
In a group called the Wanstead Players. And I just thought it would be really lovely.
That'd be proper magic.
End my book tour, which has gone all over the country in some really, lovely gigs.
Is it is the theatre has much been done to this venue?
It's a nice hall.
But is it? I mean,
it's a 60s hall with a stage.
Is it the same hall? Is it the same hall that your mum and dad would have been in?
It's funny because I was round that way fairly recently, and I peered in through the double doors, and there was just a crack, just a few inches big. And this is when I decided I wanted to do it. And I peered in, and I could see, and it looked just the same.
Oh, fantastic!
I think probably Probably the chairs aren't those. You know those like metal tubular ones with a bit of canvas on. Yes. I think they're probably not that anymore. They're probably a bit comfier than that.
Isn't that fantastic though? So what a lovely thing to do.
That's on Wednesday evening at the Sir James Hawkey Hall, Woodford Green.
Well, and
if you live around that way.
What are you on Twitter? Because you're Tony _Robinson.
I am, yeah.
So there's a Tony Robinson who got there first.
Yeah. Well, I was never kind of very interested in doing it, and about 6 months ago, I decided to have a go at it, and I've really enjoyed it.
Welcome to the dark side. Yeah. It's all downhill from here.
Yeah, people can be really daft. But actually, what I do find nice is that when people slag me off, actually, there's always 2 or 3 people out there who will come and defend me in a witty way.
Yeah.
You know, they'll play that joke. I mean, you and I were playing that joke earlier on.
Oh no, I meant every word of that.
Well, and Mad Kath. I thought Mad Kath would turn out to be, a nice middle class producer. Listeners, she is in rags. Her hair is like Miss Havisham. It's a bit hideous, and I can say that because she doesn't understand most of what's going on.
You're a braver man than me. Blimey, I was going to... there's so much in the book that I sort of want to talk about, but I don't want to talk about, so I don't want to read it. I've just opened the book randomly. John Wayne.
Yeah.
You work with John Wayne, and I love the bit where... Well, there's so much about that whole story is great, but when John Wayne's trying to improvise... some dialogue, and he doesn't have a clue because he's from a different world. That's not what he was it? But he's really struggling to improvise.
It was one of the weirdest times in my life. I mean, I won't go into. I talk at length about John Wayne because. I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I, that before we started all this, that so much of my life, there's a play called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead by Tom Stoppard, and it's a brilliant device. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who in Hamlet are tiny, tiny parts.
They pop in twice, don't they, I think?
Something, I don't know, something like that. But in this play, it's about their lives and them talking to each other, and then suddenly... 2 or 3 times an act, Hamlet will come by, and suddenly the lights blaze, and they're sort of trying to talk to Hamlet, but he's talking to his court, and everyone thinks Hamlet's wonderful, and then Hamlet disappears again, and the lights go dim, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are just talking to each other in their boring way. I have felt for most of my life like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and so when I'm making this film with John Wayne, I've just got this bit part in it. Every week or so, suddenly he would be there with his whole court, and everything would be dramatic, and everything would turn different. And there was this one time where I'm shooting a scene with him in the King George V dock. This is when there was still a dock there, although it was, it was really rotting and falling apart. And I'm jammed in his Winnebago, and. Winnebago always sounds really exotic. They are fairly small, and when you've got him and all his producers and all their acolytes,
it's a posh caravan.
It is. Yeah, exactly. So when all his people are there, and there's me and the director are like kind of pushed up against the lav, and the director's trying to explain to him about how he should improvise, and he is totally unable to understand the concept of improvisation, and at the same time he is unbuttoning his shirt, and this giant of a man, this god of a man, reveals himself, because he's just got over having cancer, as having the biggest mother-hugging scar. See what I did there? That you've ever seen in your life, that starts at his throat and goes down to his tummy button, then turns left like someone's opened him up like a book. And I'm still trying to have this bizarre conversation with him. And at the same moment, his wig man is putting on his wig, which is the most important thing in the film. Yeah, it's far more important than this wonderful hulk of a man underneath it. The wig must have cost, and must have cost thousands of pounds, and must have sacrificed the hair of probably a quarter of the developing world. But it's like solid. If he had spun round, the wig would have stayed
fantastic
where it was, and all that. And we're trying to do an impro class, darling. That time it was pretty weird,
and he doesn't get it, does he? So I'm angry, but I understand what's going on, and I say, I'll throw you in the water. Yeah, you do that, John. It's very quick. We've only got a couple of minutes left, and the book really is a joy, Tony. And it felt very weird meeting you this evening because I've read this over the last 5 days. And it feels like I know you. I don't know you, of course not. But you give so freely of yourself in the book. In the last 2 minutes, though, Steve Marriott of the Small Faces. You were friends with Steve Marriott as a kid.
Yeah, but it was one of those funny friendships. I think most kids have got them. We were supposed to be like great friends, and in a way we were. But he bullied me.
Oh no!
So much of the time.
Did he?
Yeah. He was he was a bit younger than me, but he was like this beefy boy.
Yeah.
And he was from Plaistow, which was rougher than South Woodford, so he could be like this rough boy.
Yeah.
And he was in Oliver too. He was my understudy in Oliver. And if you hear it, listen to his songs now.
Yeah.
And you can hear that he's like this cross between Little Richard and the Artful Dodger.
Yeah, there really is that.
It really is that. Yeah. And so we assumed that we were friends. It wasn't like that we weren't friends, but we were friends that had,
Oh no!
Yeah. But it was all right because later, if you read his autobiographies, that's what he did to everybody.
Oh, right.
And until I kind of read about him and his struggle, because he really struggled with
sad life,
and he
despite
struggled
all
with
the
personal
success.
relationships.
Yeah.
And people did go off him because that's what he'd learned. That's how he'd learned how to deal with things, and it was such a liberation to me because I thought it was just me.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine if Paul McCartney had bullied you and you thought you were the only person in the world that Paul McCartney had bullied.
There's that bit where you go and he gets a bit of success with the band and you go and see him in a concert and you wait backstage to meet him and he comes out, he doesn't notice you because there are screaming fans, but he looks kind of bloated and unhappy and disinterested and very sad life.
I still to this day don't know whether he caught my eye or not at that moment. And I just the doors of the coach close, and they drive off, and it's like my childhood is driving off with them.
Tony, it's such a thrill to meet you, and thank you so much for coming in. And the book is an absolute joy. Tony Robinson, No Cunning Plan. It's out now. The show again, is it this Wednesday? That's
this Wednesday at the Sir James Hawkey Hall.
And if people want to get tickets, where you don't know, do you? I've asked the wrong person that question. I'll retweet the link for the book and people can come and hassle you on Twitter.
Cheers, mate.
It's so nice to meet you, Tony.
It was fun, wasn't it?
This is brilliant. Well done. Fantastic. Sir Anthony... There we go.
It seemed like it was only 3 hours, this interview.
You cheeky git. We'll take your calls after the news. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. This is Talk Radio.